Hello, good morning, everyone. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. So, this morning in this edition of Social Studies with Miss Karen, we're going to be continuing to go over Chapter 10, okay? We're going to be looking at the final section where the Aztecs and the Spanish went to battle with each other, okay? Also, we will be reviewing the activity from last week, the zoom in about the smallpox epidemic and the impact on the Aztecs, okay? So here we go. Going to present my screen. Okay, so everyone, here we go. So basically, why did the smallpox devastate the Aztecs? Okay, so primary effect of the smallpox epidemic. The Aztecs had no immunity to the smallpox, and it caused many of them to get sick and die from the disease. Okay, the Spanish, they already had immunity to the disease, so they were not really affected by it. A secondary effect, because so many Aztecs died from smallpox, this would have included warriors. So the Aztecs would have lost warriors in the military. Medical help, there would have been no mention of medical help because the medical services weren't advanced like ours are today. Would have been limited medical services available, if any at all. And also, they wouldn't have really known what to do. For the Aztecs, this was a disease that was unknown to them, so they wouldn't have known anything about it. They might not have even known really what was happening, other than that people were getting sick and passing away. And so who had the advantage? Well, of course, the Spanish would have gained the advantage. They were immune to the disease. They still had a complete military, where the Aztecs would have lost many of their warriors to the disease, okay? So everyone, let's look at the invasion, okay? So this is when the Aztecs and the Spanish go to battle with each other, okay? So Cortez and the Spanish were creating alliances with neighboring indigenous groups. You remember that the Aztecs, they didn't really have the best relationships with their neighboring groups because, if you remember, they would have these things called the Flowery Wars. They would go to battle, they would not kill anyone. They would go to battle and they would take the people from the indigenous groups captive, and then they would commit human sacrifice. So these practices of human sacrifice probably didn't make the Aztecs very popular among their neighboring communities, okay? So after establishing his colony on the east, Cortez decided that it was time to make his way to Tenochtitlan, and on his way, he was creating alliances with these neighboring indigenous groups, building his military, okay? And so the Spanish strategy, the Cortez forces, they defeated the Pascan people and were given gifts of food, clothing, gold, and slaves. One of the slaves was a woman named Malinke. And so she was from a noble indigenous family and had been sold into slavery when her father died. Malinke helped Cortez and act as an intermediary. So that means she was helping them to communicate with each other. She helped Cortez to communicate with Moctezuma because she was able to act as a translator, okay? Because she spoke Mayan and Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, and she eventually learned Spanish, which of course was what allowed her to be able to act as a translator between Cortez and Moctezuma. So Malinke, she converted to Christianity, was known as Doña Marina. She became Cortez's advisor and spy and also had a child with Cortez. Without her help, Cortez would not have been able to succeed with his mission. So she was really, really important. So the march to Tenochtitlan, so basically his travel to Tenochtitlan. So Cortez now had everything he needed to plan a lethal attack on the Aztecs, and he continued his march to Tenochtitlan. So Cortez was able to convince the Totonacs, Tlaxcalans, and the Cholulans to join the Spanish in the battle against the Aztecs. So he now had a force of 400 Spaniards, 6,000 Tlaxcalans, and 12 horses. Okay, so he had this big, big group of people that were going to go do battle with the Aztecs. However, conversely, you can see the Aztecs had quite a bit of a different strategy. While the Spanish were continuing to build their forces and prepare for the battle that was about to happen, Moctezuma knew that the Spanish were coming, but he just decided to wait and see what would happen. He thought that they were coming in peace, maybe. Maybe he was taking advantage of the fact that maybe they weren't coming to take over Tenochtitlan. However, his younger brother knew better. His younger brother begged him not to open Tenochtitlan to the Spanish. However, Moctezuma did not listen. Moctezuma not only allowed Cortez to enter Tenochtitlan, but he exchanged gifts, welcomed him with a speech found on page 231. So his speech, uh, my lord, you are weary, you are tired, you have come to your land, you have arrived in our city, in your city, Mexico. You've come to rest beneath your canopy. You've come to your seat, to your throne. If only one of them were here to witness, to wonder at what I now see myself, to what I see, I the last, I the reigning one of all our lords. No, I am not dreaming. I am not sleepwalking. I am seeing you now. I see eyes in your face. Come now and give rest. Take possession of your royal palaces. Give comfort to your body. Enter your land, my lords. Be assured, Moctezuma, have no fear. We love you greatly. Today our hearts are at peace. And so Moctezuma welcomed Cortez with this speech. And so that speech is found on page 231 in the textbook. And so you can see how this is a meeting of two different worlds. The Aztec worldview included conquering other people, but the Aztec worldview, they usually took them captive, okay, because they wanted to use them as human sacrifice. They didn't really just kill them, as opposed to the Spanish, who, when they went into warfare, they would just kill people, no questions asked. Like, they didn't capture them, they keep them, they would just, and then they would use their enemies as allies. So as the Spanish grew closer to Tenochtitlan, Moctezuma thought about what to do. So when Cortez finally arrived, Moctezuma welcomed him into the city and they exchanged gifts. So next slide is a picture of what happens when they meet. Okay. And so everyone, the battle starts, okay? The battle starts. So Cortez and his forces, they were taken to live in the palace of Moctezuma's late father, shown them the glories of their city. So they got to see all of the gold and valuable goods and everything that the Aztecs had in the markets. And so they saw all of the golden treasures and they were drawn to these things. So the Spanish eventually attacked the empire as they hungered for their riches. Moctezuma was placed under house arrest and became a subject of Spanish rule. Several battles were fought between the Aztecs and the Spanish over the next few months. Then news came that more Spanish troops had arrived on the coast. They had been sent by Governor Velasquez to arrest Cortez. Cortez didn't want anything to get in the way of his victory, what he thought was his victory, so he left Tenochtitlan to deal with this imposing threat and left Pedro de Alvarado in charge of Tenochtitlan. So he defeated Velasquez's forces and then convinced them to join the battle against the Aztecs. So when the Spanish returned, Tenochtitlan was in uproar, and Cortez forced Moctezuma to try and calm his people. But they were not very happy, and so they threw stones at the emperor. Shortly after this, Moctezuma died as a result of his injuries, or was killed by the Spanish, not quite sure which. But the Aztecs ended up attacking the Spanish and their allies, killing many of them and driving the rest out of Tenochtitlan. And so how does this end? So by the time Cortez returned and attacked Tenochtitlan with a stronger force about 6 months later, the smallpox epidemic had killed off 25% of the Aztec population. The Spanish cut the aqueducts to the city, and after a siege of about 80 days, the Aztecs were defeated. The Spanish tore down the city as they captured it. Only 60,000 Aztecs survived in the city, which lay in ruins around them. The Aztec Empire had ceased to exist. In its place, Cortez would lay the foundations for another Spanish colony in the Americas. So, in the end, the Spanish were able to not only defeat the Aztecs, but they basically decimated the empire that the Aztecs had built. So they were able to declare their victory. Okay, so everyone, and that kind of brings us to the end of So that brings us to the end of chapter 10, okay? So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and joining me for chapter 10, talking about the Aztecs and the Spanish and their epic battle. Now, that's about it. Thank you so much, okay? We'll see you again soon. Okay, bye.